Thank you, thank you. Sit, sit, sit. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm honored to be here, and thank you for that introduction, Eugene. It's wonderful to just look around this room. This is so amazing to see all of these leaders, present and future. And I want to thank everyone here for your leadership in bringing us all together in this moment to celebrate what leadership looks like and what can be done and who can do it. Because that, as much as anything, is what this lunch is about. Reminding ourselves that there are new and perhaps different faces than some would associate with leadership of our city, our state, and our country. And when I look around this room and I think about who I know is in this room, I see just that. So I applaud all of you, and I thank you, and in particular, I thank you for being here, knowing that some of our best work can happen when we remind ourselves that we are not alone and that we're all in it together. And for that reason, I want to remind everyone to take a look around the room and hold and capture the image of who is here, all of us together, so that when you find yourselves in those times that we do, that you may be the only one at the table who looks like you or appears to have your experience, that you're not alone. We're all here with you. I am honored to be here. I know Hilda Solis, our great secretary, former Secretary of Labor, was here. She's an incredible role model, incredible friend, and so I want to applaud her in her absence. And oh, you're there! Someone told me you left. There, hi, Hilda. You know, I've been asked to talk a little bit about, as I'm sure the secretary did, about what it means to have the opportunity to hold public office and what one should do with that opportunity and how one arrives at that place in the beginning. And so I'll share with you all a little bit about my background. I am one of two daughters of parents who met when they were graduate students at the University of California, Berkeley in the 1960s. And my parents met when they were actively involved in the civil rights movement. As my sister Maya and I like to joke, we grew up surrounded by a bunch of adults who spent full time marching and shouting about this thing called justice. And frankly, growing up in that environment, the heroes among many, the architects of the civil rights movement, were the lawyers. It was Thurgood Marshall and Charles Hamilton Houston and Constance Baker Motley, who understood the skill of the profession of law to translate the passion from the streets to the courtrooms of our country, and do the work of reminding people who unfortunately then and still now need reminding of that great promise we articulated in 1776. That we are all and should be treated as equals. So at a very young age, I thought, this is important, good work, being a voice for equality. I want to be a lawyer. And so at a young age, I decided I wanted to be a lawyer. Right out of law school, I went to the Alameda County DA's office, which was considered to be one of the best DA's offices in the country, in large part because Earl Warren, who went on to be the Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court, had been the DA of Alameda County. And some people said, well, you're coming from this civil rights background. Your sister went on to be the head of the ACLU. Why did you choose to be a prosecutor? And I said, because I believe that it is very important to be a voice for the voiceless. And there are many ways that we can do that, as we all know in this room. But the path that I chose to do that was to be a prosecutor and be a voice for some of the most vulnerable in our community, who happen to be victims of crimes that target children, or that are based on racial hatred, or that are based on abusing seniors and things of that nature. So that's the work I decided to do. And I've in fact personally prosecuted everything from low-level offenses to homicide cases. I then went after the DA's office and after prosecuting many cases, and I ran for district attorney of San Francisco. I filed my papers in 2002. So at the time that I decided to run for district attorney of San Francisco, I had been a career prosecutor. And there was an incumbent in office. There was an individual who at that time was the district attorney of San Francisco, and he comes from this old political family, and he had been in office for 2 terms. And his nickname happens to be KO, because he was known as being a boxer who knocked people out. And people said to me, "You're going to run against him? Why?" And I said, "Well, they happen to have the lowest conviction rate for domestic violence, for example. I think there should be the creation of a unit in that office that is focused on child sexual assault, for example. I think there's work that we can do around focusing on crimes attacking our elders, for example." And then people looked at me, though, and they said, "Well, there's never been a woman to be the district attorney of San Francisco before. There's never been a person of color to be the district attorney of San Francisco before." People said to me, "Well, maybe it's not your time." People said to me, "It's going to be really difficult." People said to me, "It's going to be a lot of work," as though I just wanted to sit around and eat bonbons as an alternative. It's not your time. Or they may even just say to you, "Why don't you be a little bit more quiet about that?" But when that happened with me, when I decided to run for district attorney of San Francisco, I said no. And I will say to each one of you, when you have that experience, you must also say no. You must understand and know that when you have the thoughts that you do about the way the world works, when you have the thoughts that you do and the feelings and emotions that come with that about what can be, unburdened by what has been, that even if you're not surrounded by a large group of people that can see or hear or understand what you're saying, push on through and don't listen to no. Part of my experience and probably approach to this is the fact that my mother, who raised my sister and me, was predominantly raised my sister and me, my mother was a scientist. And her specialty was, in fact, breast cancer research. My mother had two goals in her life. Two goals: to raise her two daughters to be productive and to end breast cancer. And part of what my mother would do is she would take us to work with her on the weekends, which meant going to the lab. And there she was, and she was completely focused on knowing that we can make advances on something like breast cancer, and we must be unburdened by what has been. She understood, like I know all of you do, because this is why you're here. She understood the power of an individual to be focused on knowing there can be solutions, and doing that without any burden, without feeling any weight of thinking that we must blindly adhere to tradition and accept things the way they are. It is the work of knowing that we each as individuals can make a difference, and then working toward that, knowing what can be, unburdened by what has been. And so part of what I'd like all of the folks who are here to think about is the role you can play in your community on so many important issues, whatever it is that matters to you, based on the experience you've had in life, based on the experience your family and your parents or grandparents have had, based on the experience your neighbors have. There is a role for each of us to play. And it is truly about understanding that each one of us has a voice, and a very powerful voice when we choose to use it. And that there are a lot of people who are not in this room right now, who we know, who are so excited about the fact that we happen to be in this room right now. And we have then a responsibility, if we're in this room. If you're in this room, you've got something going on. If you're in this room, you're jamming. And if you're in this room, I would also suggest to you that you're part of the Role Model Club. And what is that? Sometimes that can be a really lonely place to be. To be in the Role Model Club, which is part of what I'm going to just refer to this organization as, it's the Role Model Club. It means that you're in a position where, whether you realize it or not, people you know, and it can be your family members, it can be people you grew up with, it can be your neighbors, it can be your coworkers. They're looking at you, and they're watching you to see how you do what you do. Hilda knows what I'm talking about. They watch you to see how you do what you do, and they will emulate you. They will look at you and watch when you exercise courage or take risk, and they will be encouraged by that. And so this is what it means to be in the Role Model Club. It means to know that at every stage of your life, no matter your age or your title or your income, you have the ability, if not the responsibility, to consider yourselves as role models and then own that power and act accordingly. You don't need to be the chief elected law enforcement officer of the state of California or the former Secretary of Labor to be a leader or a role model or use your voice, because in fact, we are all much stronger when everyone in this room owns her power and knows her ability, and back to the first point, remembers that you're not in it alone, we're all in it together. So I want to close my comments by saying that I think one of the best ways that we can do what we are charged and have responsibility with doing is, one, making friendships to constantly remind yourself you're not alone. Network, guys. Exchange cards with everybody at your table if you don't know them. Stay in touch. It's also about remembering that most movements and most causes have been most effective when the leaders, everyone here, have been mindful of the importance of building coalition. Part of what we all have a responsibility for remembering is that we are all, and institutions and causes are most powerful when everyone who seemingly has nothing in common but has everything in common is brought to the table. So in our fight for diversity, we always have to remember to be truly diverse, which means reaching out to people that aren't like us also. Not just being included, but also reaching out and staying committed to that point of coalition building. That's how I got elected to all of my offices. It was a coalition of the African American, especially in San Francisco, where the largest Asian group was Chinese, the Chinese American, the LGBT, the soccer moms, when I was first elected, I'll tell you, all of these people who seemingly had nothing in common were sitting around this big table licking envelopes at the direction of my mother. And it was that kind of force, as Hilda knows, on many issues, when we bring people together, that makes a difference. So coalition building is important. Owning your voice is important. Staying connected and keeping yourself in an environment also where you surround yourself and you choose, and you must choose, to surround yourself with people who are invested in your success. Because part of what I want to remind everyone here is, don't ever walk out of here apologizing for your success. And always think about who among the people that I speak with every day, who among the people whose opinions I care about, are the people who are invested in my success, who are constantly applauding me on believing I can do what I want to do. If you don't have those people in your life, you better find them, because usually those people who are most likely to be good at it are the same people that if you ask them for help, they'll say yes. So remember that. And then last, I'll leave you with some advice my mother gave me. And she said, you may be the first to do many things, but make sure you're not the last. And that's at its core what this organization is about and why we're all in here together. And I know when I look around this room that there are many firsts in here, and we're all going to make sure we're not the last. And I thank you for your leadership, and I thank you for just doing everything you do. Let's applaud each other. Thank you.
Thank you very much.